These are the best grapplers in each UFC division, from flyweight to heavyweight. One fighter, one honorable mention for every division. The criteria is overall grappling, so wrestling, ground and pound, clinch work to get to the fence, takedowns, and then your finishing ability there. And then if you've out-grappled other people that are high level, that will also get you a lot more points. We'll start with the flyweight division here, and the best grappler in the division is Alejandro the Cannibal Pantoja. And it's pretty hard to deny that Pantoja is number one at flyweight, as he's the champion dominantly, and he does that through his grappling in his fights with Asakura, Urseg, Royval, Moreno. His whole title run, he's been using the grappling so well with amazing control, very strong. His rear naked choke, he can just fucking choke you through the jaw like he did to Alex Perez. And he even out-grappled Moreno, which is really impressive. So his grappling is very high level. His back takes are slick. Even though sometimes he does have trouble with the takedowns, he still has okay entries. So for the number one grappler in flyweight, it's got to be Alexandre Pantoja. The guy has 5 UFC submissions, which is a 35% sub rate in the UFC, which isn't bad. Next, we'll go to Tatsuro Taira, and even after Taira's first loss to Brandon Royval, I'll put him on this list because his grappling is very good. We saw in that Royval fight that his grappling is very good, as when he took Royval's back for those 2 rounds, there was no chance. He held it for the entire round, and that's what he's really good at. His back control is absolutely amazing. I would say even better than Pantoja's. And he has very creative grappling. You see injured Alex Perez with that trip from the standing back take. His ground and pound's pretty good as well, but his striking is so bad that he really needs to be this good at grappling to even survive in the flyweight division. And his takedowns were kind of getting stuffed by Royval in certain moments, and he was getting his ass beat. So overall grappling, and especially his jiu-jitsu control, and even his submissions, he submitted Edgar Chairez, Jesus Aguilar. Didn't submit Edgar Chairez, submitted Jesus Aguilar, and I think CJ Vergara. But Taira's a very good grappler for the flyweight division, and we'll go to bantamweight with Merab Dvalishvili. And even though Merab's finishing potential isn't there, we have to respect champions in this, as Merab has used his grappling and his wrestling more in all of his wins in the UFC, and well, he's on an 11-fight win streak, so must be working. Sean O'Malley, he ragdolled him basically, even though O'Malley was surviving pretty well. He dominated the fight. Henry Cejudo had no answers for his pressure. Peter Yan had no answers for the wrestling pressure, and that's really it. There's nothing technical to break down with Merab. He goes at you until you break, like he did to Marlon Moraes after he got caught, or he holds you up against the fence when you can't take you down like against Aldo. But he'll implement his grappling in all ways. No submissions, but if he's making it to the bantamweight belt with his grappling, and I guess he has to be on the list. Honorable mention for bantamweight is Divison, God of War Figueiredo, and Figueiredo is a really dangerous grappler, nearly the opposite of Merab. He does have sometimes trouble with control against high-level guys and getting out-scrambled and just out-grappled in general by Moreno. He got submitted, but Figueiredo is a very, very good grappler. He's very nasty with his chokes, his rear naked choke. He has an amazing guillotine. His takedowns, they've been getting better. He has very good single legs. He was able to take down Marlon Vera very easily. But as most little guys, he really shines in the scrambling department. That fight with Moreno, awful. That fight, all 4 fights with Moreno, he was scrambling very well. And even when he was losing on the feet to Cody Garbrandt in the first round, he knew, flip that switch, take him down, and he did with real ease and submitted Cody. So this guy, so many submissions in the UFC, 4 in the UFC, which is 25%. Very impressive for God of War, so he's my honorable mention for the bantamweight division. We go to the featherweight division, and number 1 for me, this is where it's going to get a little controversial. I still have Aljamain Sterling, because Sterling, I think the thing with the number 2 guy and Sterling is, yes, the number 2 guy, I assume you know who it is, beat Aljamain Sterling, but in their grappling exchanges, Sterling was outworking him a lot of the time. And I think Sterling has that finishing ability, even though he hasn't really shown it because he's against, in the last few fights, because he's against like the highest level. But Sterling has the best back takes in MMA history. I don't think that's a hot take. This guy, he can get your back in so many ways, up against the fence, in scrambles. He has you pinned against the cage. And his control is very good as well. His positional control. He can hit lots of submissions. He ran through Corey Sandhagen pretty easily. He dominated Calvin Cato, just threw him around, ragdolled him. And he's very strong for the featherweight division, at least, as he's shown. That fight with Movsar was really, really good. Showcase of grappling for both of them. So, for me, that he has so many good grappling performances. The Peter Yan second fight where he, in the bottom left there, where my boy bitch Peter Yan after Yan talked all that shit. But so for me, Aljamain Sterling's the number 1 grappler at featherweight, sorry. And number 2, I assume you know who it is. It's Movsar Evloev. And Evloev is an amazing grappler, so strong in the wrestling, some of the best wrestling and returns that you'll see, but no finishing ability for Evloev. Just control, and he lands pitter-patter shots, but nothing impressive, nothing dangerous for Evloev on the ground. But Evloev is just so dominant that it's really hard to deny him a spot here. Out-grappled Diego Lopez for the most part, escaped all his submissions, out-grappled Arnold Allen. It was very competitive with an amazing grappler like Sterling, destroyed Dan Ige. His wrestling is so high level. His trips, his body lock takedowns, all of the wrestling from Evloev is really fun to watch. So he actually isn't, for me, that much of a boring fighter, but when you have no finishing ability on the ground, you're going to get knocked down a bit. So that's my reasoning for having Sterling above Evloev. It's definitely not that Sterling's one of my favorite fighters, but we'll go on to the lightweight division, and the best grappler there is obviously Islam Makhachev. Islam's the champion right now, so it's hard to deny him. And well, he submitted Charles Oliveira, he submitted Dustin Poirier, he outgrappled to an extent Volkanovski, and then he ran through everyone before that. And his wrestling is obviously going to be very dominant. His foot sweeps, his double legs, his entries are pretty good. Up against the fence, though, he's nasty with his trips and his drag downs. You can't really stop him. That submission against Oliveira is just amazing, that he sat in his guard in the first round and kind of beat him up with elbows, but didn't really do much. Drops him and jumps on an arm triangle and beats Oliveira by submission. Poirier, you see the ball in the middle there, that foot sweep at the end of the fight to finish Poirier was beautiful into the Darce choke, and he got the finish. And Islam is just so dominant with his grappling, and it makes people fear him so much that he can strike with them. And I'm not saying that Islam's striking is horrible, but it's definitely supported by the threat of the takedown. And now he has his biggest test of his grappling in UFC 311 against Arman Tsarukyan, and my number 2 pick is going to look really stupid if Arman outgrapples Islam, because Arman beat my number 2 guy, Charles Oliveira. But I think you can give Charles the second spot, at least, the man with the most submissions in UFC history. Let me just give you the number, because it's crazy. Yeah, 16 submissions in the UFC, 70% of his wins is one of the most ridiculous stats you'll ever see in MMA. And Oliveira can lock up anything. His wrestling has been improving. He kind of ragdolled Michael Chandler in the wrestling, just coming in with a kick or something and then switch under straight to the back. So slick from Oliveira. And yeah, his jiu-jitsu is just amazing. His back control, obviously amazing. Chandler could do nothing about the body triangle in all 3 of the rounds of their fight. He was so dangerous with his submission attempts against Arman Tsarukyan, even though he came up the loser in that fight. Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier both got destroyed on the ground, submitted pretty easily. Gaethje in a round, I forgot how quick that was. He submitted Kevin Lee. I mean, I could go on and on with Charles Oliveira submissions, but you know how good this guy is. Charles Oliveira, second best grappler at lightweight. We'll move to the welterweight division, and we've got the champion again, Belal. Remember the name, Muhammad, and I'm a Belal defender. This guy is very good, and I sympathize with the story. You know, he's 36 now, and he finally gets to the belt. and it's been through dominating people in the grappling. His body triangle is actually so underrated, and his back control here up against the fence without hooks in is something he does well, and people will call it boring, but, he's winning, so who cares? But his takedowns are amazing. His double legs and his slam takedowns where it's a double leg into the high crotch and he takes you down, and it's just suffocating pressure, even though he's not finishing you, but the suffocating pressure of Bilal really gets to all of his opponents. I mean, his win streak right now is 11, 10-fight win streak for Bilal Muhammad. And he won almost all of his fights through the grappling, besides that Sean Brady fight, because Sean Brady getting finished by Bilal. But we move. Bilal Muhammad, very, very good grappler. And I think he out-grapples Shavkat very, very easily and ragdolls him. Next, in the welterweight division, I really did want to go with Ian Gary, but I thought, no, I think Sean Brady's still a better grappler. Sean Brady has a lot of strength. That's what I noticed. In that Gilbert Burns fight, he was a lot stronger than Gilbert in everything. But Gilbert Burns fight is really what put him on the list for me. I know he ran through Kelvin Gastelum dominantly, just looked like a monster, was doing anything he wanted in the jiu-jitsu, but Kelvin Gastelum isn't that good. But doing what he did to Gilbert Burns, just taking him down kind of at will with the pressure, with these big double legs, slamming him onto the mat, very, very impressive. And his jiu-jitsu is just very high level in general. He always has a very good wrist control, I will note, controlling his opponent's wrist so they can't stop him. So I do think Sean Brady is a very, very good grappler. He focuses on the control time a lot, it's too much sometimes, but Sean Brady, high level in the grappling, he'll be my honorable mention for welterweight. Now to the easiest pick on the list. Khamzat Chimaev is obviously the best grappler at middleweight. This guy is a complete monster in the first round with the grappling, and well, probably in the second, and in the second and the third. But in the first, he is the most dangerous fighter in the world with the grappling or the striking. Not with the grappling or the striking, but he's just the most dangerous fighter in the world in round one, including strikers, because this guy's submissions and his takedowns are ridiculous. Look at the bottom right corner. Look how low his shot is against Robert Whittaker. That looks like a takedown that should be stuffed. He's at his ankles. Whittaker looks like he's hitting a switch or he's sprawling, and it didn't matter. He came and he subbed Whittaker, ran through him so strong, and he cranked the jaw off of Whittaker because he had a pre-existing injury. His takedowns, he'll just lift people up and slam them to the ground. He has so much power, and his shot is just unstoppable. But his submissions are just as good. He'll jump on things, the Dar/Barabo choke, the rear naked, all of this Khamzat has. And he has ground and pound, he throws it in, and he's just suffocating with the pressure, but he's looking for a finish at all times. I want to see him grapple well later into fights, because later into his fights with Burns and Usman, he could only really land takedowns and not do much with the grappling. But maybe in the Dricus fight, because that's probably going to happen, I think Dricus can survive the first round, and we'll see how Khamzat's grappling is in the second. Now, next in the middleweight division is one of my boys, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. This guy is an amazing grappler. Destroyed his last, 6 opponents with relative ease. Michel Pereira didn't even put up a fight after the first 20 seconds. He landed about 20 20 takedowns in that fight and beat him up with elbows. His ground and pound is really what I think is good from Hernandez. He just mixes up with these nice elbows to the face, to the body. Very interesting, unorthodox elbows from all positions, and his jiu-jitsu is good as well. He'll gas you out so much. It's all about the pressure and the shots up against the fence. Constantly pressure with the striking. Shoot, take him down. He defends it, pressure again, shoot again. He's relentless. And submitted Rodolfo Vieira after gassing him out, which has to count for something. Rodolfo Vieira is one of the best grapplers in the gi ever. But his win over Roman Kopylov showed that he just had the dog in him. Kopylov was kicking him hard to the body. Second round, took him down, submitted him, gave the nod to the camera as he chokes him out. Hernandez is up for big things. I think he's going to out-grapple Brendan Allen in their fight in Seattle, like he did when they fought the first time in the LFA, which he won 50-45 dominantly with a decision. I think he might finish Brendan if it's a main event, 5 rounds. But 3 rounds, I think he'll beat Brendan Allen by decision. And Anthony Hernandez on the way up at middleweight, and an amazing grappler. Well, we'll go from two very good grapplers at middleweight to the division with the worst grapplers, light heavyweight. And number one is Nikita the Miner Krylov. And since Krylov's been very inactive, we haven't seen his grappling in a while, but it is kind of nasty for the skill level of light heavyweight. I mean, he has 16 submission wins in his career and 5 in the UFC, which is very impressive. And big submission wins over Orion Span with that triangle. He outgrappled Volkan Özdemir. He choked out OSP. He's done a lot of good work in the UFC in both of his runs. Yeah, I forgot he was in the UFC before, but now he's back and doing very, very well. Yeah, his takedowns aren't the greatest, but they work against the light heavyweights. Good body lock takedowns. And he can land good ground and pound elbow, especially from the guard. He got submitted by Paul Craig, but that's Paul Craig. And so yeah, with not much competition, I would say Nikita Krylov is first for light heavyweights in the grappling, and second will be Magomed Ankalaev. And you would think Ankalaev would be first, but this guy's really not a grappler. But the whole thing about him is he can outgrapple Pereira, but he's mostly a striker. He does show a very good ability with the ground and pound, and excuse me, his wrestling is okay. He kind of just holds you up against the fence or in one position and looks to land pretty good ground and pound. So that's why I have him on the list. Absolutely no submission threat for Ankalaev. But when you combine good wrestling and ground and pound at light heavyweight, you become an okay grappler. So he'll be the honorable mention for the light heavyweights. We'll go to the heavyweight division. And number one, first I want to say, fuck John Jones. He doesn't beat Tom Aspinall, but he's still a very, very good grappler and the best at heavyweight. I mean, so many submissions. His ground and pound is probably the best in UFC history, him or GSP. His takedowns will suplex you in the air, double you. Osotagaris against Stipe Miocic. And his submissions are nasty as well. That brutal guillotine over Machida, the Kimura over Belfort. I mean, that fake guillotine over Cyril Gahn. But John Jones, everyone knows this guy's grappling is good. We'll move on to someone that isn't a duck pussy bitch. Which is Jilton Almeida. And Tom Aspinall, sorry, I think Tom is the best heavyweight in the world, but he's not here on the grapplers list because I think Jilton is one of the most dominant grapplers we've ever seen. This guy at heavyweight has some of the nastiest double legs you'll ever see. He just picks guys up and slams them and double legs them down. There's no resistance by these heavyweights. It's real dominance. And when he gets on the ground, he's usually finishing, and everyone got turned off after that one bad performance where he didn't finish Derek Lewis over 5 rounds. But his finish rate is literally, he's been to decision twice in his entire career, which is pretty good. And yeah, on the ground, he's suffocating with his pressure, and he's looking to get to the back and get to the mount. Those are his two favorite positions, probably, to set up his rear naked choke, which is his best choke by far. He hasn't actually landed any other submission in the UFC besides the rear naked choke. So if he gets to your back at heavyweight, it's probably over. I actually think Spivak will maybe give him a challenge, survive, or get submitted. Who knows? But the honorable mention for heavyweight is Jilton Almeida. So that's all the grapplers, but I will give you a top 5 pound-for-pound grapplers just real quick. No order. Pantoja, Aljo, Islam, Oliveira, and Hamza Chimaev. Those are pound-for-pound best grapplers in the UFC. You could throw them below, but I won't. That's it for today, and